tech companies' mistakes, and a doctor's endorsement of the Apple Watch. This is Mac Voices. Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, Mac Voices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 in a 3-part Mac Voices live conversation. This time, we pick up in the middle of our discussion about tech company missteps and how they alienate customers and why they seem to be so obviously wrong, at least in hindsight. Then, we transfer over to a panel member's personal experience with his doctor and the doctor's opinion of the Apple Watch. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
Apparently not Netflix.
T-Mobile didn't charge us anymore. Or did they, Dave? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, my bill went up. Not much, but it was like $1 or something.
Yeah, okay.
Because we get.
I got around that by degrading the service. Because I found there's only one device that we use, and why pay for access to multiple devices if we don't use it?
I'm sharing.
You degraded, and your neighbors are knocking your door now. So,
well, I wasn't doing something like that, but
kidding.
I think Netflix. Some of the stories around the Valley and the local media here that sounds like they're just losing their freaking minds about. Oh my God, we've lost subscribers. We're going to lose more. Our stock is now a quarter of what it used to be. Our incentive plans are crazy, and now people are quitting and leaving and looking for new jobs and yada yada yada. Okay, it's just another Valley company that it's peaked in its time in the sun, and it's on its way to corporate middle age or old age, and needs to make room for something new. Just,
Mark, why won't they learn? And I don't. Any of these companies that they burn bright, they make money faster than they can count it, and then they do something stupid, or they seem to be surprised that there's a backlash with customers when they do something that customers don't like. And like you say, then they fade into maybe not irrelevance, but they fade into a former shadow of themselves.
So I think in the case of Netflix, I don't know what metrics they have. They have probably more data than God does. I don't know if they have enough information to actually know what's going on with their user base. But it seems, we talked about this a couple of years ago on your show of, I think it's you, me, Ken Ray, Mike Rose. Should Apple be a media company? Should Apple be a financial services company? And just looking at it, the Netflix, they're okay profitable, but because they were trying to get into so many local markets, they're investing in all sorts of localized content, and basically they're chumps on a hamster wheel. They're stuck in this. We need all this new content in order to get new subscribers, and that works up to a certain point. And at some point, your growth will level out. And Apple, remember back in 2011, 2012. Time frame when there was all this concern about, oh my God, as Apple hit peak saturation and their stock went down for a period of years until Warren Buffett bought it in and convinced all Wall Street that it's no longer a growth company, it's a very strong financial or consumer brand company, and people keep coming back and buying stuff. And then they diversified the product line enough in terms of models and sizes that they reignited a couple of years of growth. I don't know that Netflix has a couple of years of growth because
it's a one-trick pony too.
Yeah, once people have a subscription, and famously 4 or 5 years ago, Reed Hastings was quoted as saying, they're not worried about people sharing passwords and They think it's good because it introduces them to the service and gets them hooked. Well, no. In fact, this is a problem companies like Dropbox have had, which is if you build a huge user base by giving away valuable services for free, then once you turn them off, they're gonna just go somewhere else. Google right now is having a similar debate among some of its business customers who, they were saying that if you're smaller than certain size, 10 people or 15 or whatever the threshold is, you can use all of our services for free. Well, now they're trying to charge those users for it. So, I mean, that is a problem a lot of companies have, just trying to build a user base and hoping they can figure out how to monetize it later. Looping around back to Netflix and Chuck's question, on one hand, it's easy intellectually to understand we're not going to be able to grow forever. But once you get in that environment and you're looking and things that are growing and growing and growing, it's hard to emotionally insulate yourself, from that. And then the consequences of, Wall Street and the large investors, it's an ugly world out there because for growth stocks, everyone, as long as it's growing, everyone's your friend. And the reality is that a lot of growth stocks, once they peak, 50% of them go down 80% or more. And that's it. Look at Cisco. Cisco has never regained its high from 1999, 2000. Microsoft had a lost decade where its stock basically went nowhere until they got a new CEO. So the thing for companies, growth is good, and investing in them, everybody loves a winner, right? But you have to be open-eyed about it, that they all don't have infinite markets that they can sell into. And once they start to have trouble, if they're over aggressively using stock as an incentive, they're going to get chopped up, and because Netflix is down 75%, 80%, it's a horrible situation. I know some people there, but that's the nature of the business. So that cycle gets repeated over and over in technology companies, sad to say.
Yeah, it does. That's why I asked the question. It just seems like we changed the names, maybe changed the nature of the service, but this just happens on a consistent, constant basis. And, I can't decide if it's greed, if it's lack of leadership, if it's the fact that they did one thing and like Guy said, it's a one-trick pony. And so this is the only thing they know to do, and they haven't figured out a way to expand. And not that I'm necessarily smart enough to say, well, I could save Netflix, but at some point, can or should you just be satisfied with a good, solid, consistent return? By becoming one of those services just out there and it consistently delivers, may not be growing necessarily massively, but it delivers on what people want.
I have a hypothesis.
Go,
Yes,
Joe.
you do.
All right, so my hypothesis is that part of Netflix's problem is that they refused to commit to their quality programming, and the way you get and retain subscribers in this kind of market is you produce quality content and you continue to do so. So you draw people in for the cool show they went to see, and then you keep making it as a quality show. And Netflix has a reputation for taking a show, letting it run 2 seasons, and people are like going absolutely crazy over the show, and then they drop it. And I think that creates a lot of disappointment and ill will with customers, because they now assume that the cool new show that's coming out on Netflix is not going to be around long enough to make it worthwhile for them to commit.
Yeah, and another thing I would point out is these sort of emails have stopped this year, but last year and throughout the epidemic, I get from once, twice a month to 3 times a week, emails from Netflix about all these new shows you may like, and I must say, they're just absolutely piss poor horrible. That when you go in, you open the Netflix app, can you find the name of the show? Guys, you're just doing a horrible job. You send out all of these emails. Why should I have to go and find an email to remember the name of the show? Present it to me there, because you present all sorts of other useless junk in your interface that I don't care about. But, the new shows you're sending out, you should at least, have those available, for the person goes in. Because after all, you have my email address. You know who I am. When I log in, what shows I've seen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of the reason why you're making recommendations. But I think every company has its time in the sun, and I think this really shows maybe how unique Apple is in that they have developed multiple lines of businesses, and against all of the doubters, all of the people, a lot of the iPhone growth over the past 5 years has not been coming out with cheaper models. It's been coming out with more higher end, more expensive, more feature laden models, and tapping into people who are willing to buy it because it's a phone, it's a camera, it's a whatever app you use turns it into that sort of thing. So unfortunately, a lot of companies don't have it. Guy said Netflix is a one-trick pony. Yes, Facebook. I think they're in a similar sort of.
Their
position.
time is coming. Their time is coming too. But as far as Apple goes, when they are diversified. Even when you look at Disney, they are a big entertainment company, but they have parks, they have streaming services, they have movies, they have television
hotels,
shows,
they have cruises.
They have hotels. They've got all of this stuff that's going on and on and on in different directions. It's all these companies that come along and say, well, we do this one thing, but we do it really, really well. Well, you do that really, really well until you don't, or until other companies come in and eat your lunch. So, this has been the problem all along for so many of these companies is they just do one thing. And eventually they make a mistake and they get bought out by someone else who doesn't care that they do that one thing. And the lawyers and the accountants basically, it's a never-ending spiral of doom. And the thing about the iPhone is when you look at retention rates for the iPhone as compared to other companies' phones, Apple is like 80 to 85% of people who own an iPhone are going to buy another iPhone. They're not looking at costs. So these companies that are trying to base their business model around providing the biggest bang for the lowest buck, what they're moving in the wrong direction, because with that biggest bang for the lower buck also means lower profits, lower amounts of money that you can invest back into the company, and they eventually just either get bought out or fade away.
Can I go real fast?
No,
hang on a second, Warren. Brian in the chat room says, I would imagine that some of Netflix issues stem from less work from home over the past year compared to 2 years ago, too. And he also says, I agree with Mark. I feel like every time I'm in Netflix, they're showing me what they want me to watch, not helping me find what I was looking for. So
my first point is Netflix invented the streaming service, right? They were sending out discs, and then they started doing the movies online, and it was basically they did for movies what Apple did for music at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And they started it, and so they've been around for a while. Yes, it's the only thing they've done, but they did it well, and they're doing it well. How many as a society, how many streaming services do we actually want? Is it bad that Netflix will eventually go away? I mean, how many do we need?
I don't. Do you really think they'll go away? I don't mean to interrupt, but
I don't think they will. They'll be fine. But what I think is we're always saying there's too many streaming services. We had this conversation many times where our family members can't cut the cord because there's too many streaming services. It's too fragmented. It's hard to, you say, you go to Netflix and it's hard to find a movie. Well, it's hard to think of a movie and then try to figure out, A, is on a service that I could stream, B, is it something, and 9 times out of 10, everybody who can is going to torrent the movie because they can't figure it out, which I'm sure they're paying for anyways in one of the services. So it's got a problem. The real problem is, that there's too many and the services are fragmented everywhere we go. Do we want 1 or 2 major players left in this field that's going to have all the content or most of the content? Yeah, we have it. It's called cable companies, right? So we're going back to that at that point. We're going back to what we're trying to get away from, which is basically 1 or 2 companies with all the content.
The worst UI.
Exactly. So I mean, what's our answer? What do we want? Do we want more competition? Do we want Netflix to survive so Apple doesn't charge us $20 instead of $5? Do we want, be careful what we wish for, because Netflix is not great. They raised the price, but they still got Mark as a subscriber paying $2 less a month than he was, but they you're still giving him money. And we were talking in the chat. They have good shows. They have Stranger Things, which is probably one of the shows that's keeping them around right now. Probably one of the best, most watched show on TV right now. And Apple has good shows too. Apple, I'm watching Mankind this season. So far, so good. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the competition is good. The too many streaming services for users is a bad, terrible experience to go through. And that's why people don't.
Right. Because Warren, I think about what you were saying and what Jeff was saying a minute ago about quality of your offerings. Is Apple has had really good high quality shows. Maybe not as many as Netflix comes out with in a month. They come out within a year or something like that. But it's interesting that also Apple has priced it at a point where it's an easy add-on. Whereas, $17, $18, for Netflix plus, I need to have an HBO or maybe an MLB or maybe some of these other things.
Out low because they're just starting and they're trying to get subscribers.
Right.
Whereas Netflix is going higher because they have the subscribers.
Or they thought they did. Because I think the reality is, I think there's a lot of also resentment of annual price increases over the past 3 to 5 years. So even though it's hidden, even though it happens once, customers don't like that, especially for, there's so much content that really, I mean, does anybody have enough time to watch all the new shows Netflix are coming out with? But anyway, I don't want to be, critical of them because, as a company, they invented the DVD by mail. And then they went public, and in 2011, they famously had that big 70 or 80% stock hit when they said we're going to split ourselves into 2 companies, a streaming company and a DVD company. And then they got that going, and then they led the way on producing new content. So they have 2 or 2.5 successes of successfully iterating a changing and evolving business and entertainment landscape. We'll have to see what happens, with what they're doing now. But also now there's so many other companies that I think to your point, Warren, do they all need to deserve to exist? Or do they need to consolidate that? We have 2 or 3 high quality companies, and then there's another half dozen or dozen of really niche oriented businesses out there.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm going to move us on, but I'm going to take the last word. Because I kind of think I'm somewhere between Mark and Warren, that if you're delivering the value, whatever that value is to me or to Jeff or to Guy, if you're delivering the shows I want to watch, then I'm going to subscribe. And if you're trying to shove a bunch of stuff at me that I really don't care about, I mean, you try to sell me rom-coms and I'm out of here. no question about it. Science fiction, you're much more likely to pull me in, and that's probably true of a whole lot of the people here. But it just is the way it is. I wanted to just throw this out because I'm curious to see if any of you have had this experience. But I was at a doctor's appointment yesterday, and he looked down at my Apple Watch and he said, "Is that the one that detects AFib?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good for you." He said, "I think this is one of the best things that's out there that's going." And he said, "I'm hopeful that a lot of people will adopt this because it definitely helps us diagnose things so much easier, so much better." And this is a doctor who I don't think of as particularly technical from a technology standpoint, obviously from
Many
a medical
aren't.
standpoint. What, Dave?
I said many are not technically oriented.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. But I was really surprised to hear him say it. Frankly, I was so surprised that I really should have asked if he's recommending them to his patients. But the other comment that he made that was interesting because he was talking about, obviously how you can call up your AFib data. Excuse me. Your AFib data and, show it to the doctor or deliver it to the doctor. And he said, in a couple of years, I feel pretty confident that you'll be able to send this directly to us so that we'll be able to monitor you, constantly, especially if you end up having an AFib issue.
May I ask, was he a specialist or a general practice?
Specialist.
Okay.
A cardiologist or some other specialist?
Are you implying something about my age?
It must be a psychiatrist for Chuck.
I get more people impressed when I pay for my groceries.
I hope it wasn't a proctologist.
I was just about to say, unfortunately, he was a proctologist.
I'll add to that. I'm trying to get you out of this. I'll add to the fact that not only is the AFib of very much value, the blood oxygen is huge too. When especially people who are dealing with COVID, and that was always a big problem, was that your breathing was lowering, your blood oxygen was dropping. Well, now you have a watch that's going to measure the blood oxygen and show you at 97%, 98%, but they start picking down towards 92% and lower, then you got to start worrying, okay, maybe my breathing isn't as well as it should because I might have COVID. So some people have the older Apple Watches than some of us do. So you have to have a Series 7 or a Series 6 in order to have both those features. And that's what people ask. You have to know that. So just knowing that the watch does that is huge in itself. Just those two things. Now they can bring later. They're still talking about being able to do blood glucose, measuring your blood sugars and all that stuff. I know we got a long way away from that, but this watch is going to continue to be a medical aid. It's not something that replaces your medical, your doctor, but it as your doctor made that comment, that the fact of the matter is that it's providing him or her that data and allowing you to be able to see, okay, do I have AFib or not? In that case.
And David, what I found particularly interesting about it was, and again, it's a doctor's appointment, so you don't get into a half-hour discussion of tech.
Right.
But these are not medically are not approved medical devices.
Right.
They're good enough to give the doctor some information. And the fact that, anything. Some information is better than none. So.
Well, I have my health app is linked to my doctor, so I get anytime I go visit the doctor. I'm assuming many of you have that set. Whereas any of my medical results that came from my doctor, I want to be at a doctor or a doctor who's a member of a medical practice that does this, because now I can go to I can go to the health app on my watch or my iPhone and be able to look at, oh yeah, I remember what that was when I went with that thing that tested on me, and then I have it right at my fingertips. When have we ever had that? Over the years we always had to go pull the paperwork out wherever we got that gave it to us, and have all this information in our fingertips. Medical in itself, I think, is really. The doctors themselves should be happy the fact that they could send that information to you without having to spend time on the phone or talking to a nurse, or you need that information. So and not only to the two things I just talked about on the watch, but having that too is just huge.
Yeah. Guy, you had something.
Yeah, and it's related to all of this. My very first job in electronics, I told you this was a story, was with this company called Medcore. And this company made pacemakers, but the other thing that they also made was a patient home unit that you could use to monitor your pacer information and send that directly to a doctor's office over a 300 baud modem. This was
good times.
Yeah, this was 1980, and it was basically.
I think my CPAP machine still does it that way.
You take your telephone handle, you put it into this cradle, and then it would auto dial your doctor's office, and it would send your pacemaker information to that doctor's office, and it would print out on paper onto this
matrix.
Well, I no, actually, I think it was like inkjet or something like that, because it wasn't that, it was really silent. And for 1980, this was like hot stuff.
Yeah.
But that's where we were, and now we have that and about a billion other things on our wrist. And if that thing has cellular connectivity, yeah, we have instant communication with a doctor that can look at all of our vitals, or at least enough of our vitals to make a determination on whether or not we should, be going to the hospital or continue on to the barbecue to stuff our faces. So, progress.
What are answers?
Barbecue.
Oh,
Barbecue.
Yeah. Barbecue. Our discussion of the Apple Watch and its health capabilities continues in the next edition of Mac Voices. And then we take a look at why Internet Explorer, even though Microsoft says it's dead, continues to haunt the internet. That's next time on Mac Voices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.